Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Lori Brum. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. It's obviously I work the US market from a recruitment standpoint, but I live in the UK and it's actually sun shining today, Laurie. So it's a rare day. There'll be a lot of happy faces in the UK because we don't get. I think summer's about 2 weeks long these days over here.
Sounds like a good day for a walk.
Yeah, it's very cold, but very sunny, but quite nice in a way. But yeah, I think I've been outside for about 10 minutes so far today. I've not really had much of a chance, but maybe I'll go for a walk after we've recorded this show.
It's probably a good idea.
But yeah, but Laurie, welcome to the show. I know we had a chat, wasn't it? It was a fair few months back, and we were pinging back and forth on LinkedIn and this, that, and the other. And yeah, it's nice to finally get you in the virtual studio and have a chat. But for the listeners that don't know you, I'm just going to do you a bit of an intro. So started off as an intern at creative case management. You also did another internship, which was your first kind of entrance into IT. It was at InSync Computers. You then went on to be an assistant technician. You then moved on to E Plus, where you were a independent contractor. You then went on to LifeBridge Health, where you were in again. That was an IT related role. You were also at Wiley Rain LLP. You were also at Architect of Capital. And then you were a domain admin at Wiley and Rain LCC. You were also at Federal Trade Commission. And then you went and spent over 6.5 years at Convergence Technology Consulting. You were a consulting engineer doing a whole host of things to do with Active Directory and BlackBerry and VMs and all sorts. Looks like you were pretty busy over there. You were also involved with SANS, Internet Storm Center, and currently you are a member of Royersworth Women's Club. You were also a volunteer at the Perella Rainforest Reclamation Project. And you were also a volunteer at Shadow Hallow Assisted Riding. And you are currently at SimSpace, which
Yeah.
is your main career interest, if you like. You've progressed really nicely through the ranks there. You've been there over 6 years. You started off as a senior cyber range engineer. You then got promoted to a lead cyber range engineer, and you are now a senior manager at SimSpace. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. It's a lot of stuff going on in the last 20 years.
Yeah, no, it is. And it actually sounds like there's quite a bit going on now. So there's basically, 3 or 4 things going on here simultaneously. So sounds like you're a busy woman.
Yeah, it keeps me busy.
Good, good. Well, I say welcome to the show. And I know I've done you a bit of an intro, but I always like to ask the guests, who are you? What do you get up to? What's a day in the life like of Laurie? What's going down at the minute?
So that's a loaded question. I'll start off with I went to school in 2003 for my computer technology stuff. And I actually wanted to be a lawyer. And my dad said that cyber law wasn't going to be a thing. And so instead, I said, okay, I'll go into technology because it's always changing. It's challenging. And here I am 20 years later. I went back to school in, I think, 2021 with SANS. I'm a constant learner. So I got my associate's degree in 2003. I just graduated with my bachelor's of applied cybersecurity from SANS, which, as you know, comes with a whole host of new acronyms before I have a name with certification. And in an everyday thing, I've got 3 kids. So we're always running like crazy. I also volunteer with the Boy Scouts of America through my son's Cub Scout stuff. We do a lot of stuff through my other son's troop. So we've got that going on. And just juggling the team. I've got an amazing close-knit team where I work at SimSpace. I love every day getting up and actually getting to work with these people. And I love my leadership. I work for Paul Winters. My direct report to him. And he is amazing. And I've been so lucky and empowered to be in the position that I am. So I don't have too much to complain about, actually.
Yeah, good, good. Listen, shout out to Paul. He must be doing something right if he's making you happy at work, which is good. Do you know what, though, Laurie? It's like anyone that's coming on the pod, and most people in cyber, I would say, are excited about what they do. And I'm the same. Like, I've advocated for this necessarily, but I've worked every day now, a lot of days on the trot, basically. And not because I have to, because I genuinely really enjoy it. And you used the word there, you're excited to get out of bed in the morning. And I've got some friends and they genuinely dread going to work. I think sometimes we probably forget how lucky we all are to be involved with security and actually love it. It's a privilege, really, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And the idea of doing something that protects the
Mm.
everyday person is, I think, invaluable.
Yeah, no, definitely. I did a pod yesterday with a guy called Mike, and he was talking about the mission a lot. And he was talking about loyalty on his team and stuff like that. And he was putting it all down to that mission focus. It just gives you a different level of energy and drive and purpose. And when it's easy to get motivated when you've maybe just come out of a meeting or something like that. But I think when the times are tough and your back's against the wall, I think that mission and, like you say, protecting people, that gives you a different level of wanting to get things done.
Oh, yeah. And looking out for your teammates, man. When the
Yeah.
days are hard, you look towards each other and you link arms and you get it done.
Yeah. Cool, cool, very good. Cyber law, yeah. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Because there'll probably be a lot of people listening like, yeah, I've got a good idea what that is, but I wouldn't say I'm like an expert by any stretch. I'm thinking about I'm looking across here to my right because they've got a big board in front of me with all our live assignments on, and I'm thinking, yeah, there's a lot of security stuff on there, but there's nothing there that really resembles the legal ramifications of security. So perhaps you can tell us all about cyber law and what it's all about.
Back in the day, you might remember when AOL came out and everything. Back coming into the 90s, as we all know, it was the Wild West. Number one, you could IM bomb people, you could email bomb people, which means in the AOL application, there was specific codes that you could send, and it would just fill an inbox, a user's inbox, so full that they weren't able to log on to AOL.
Oh.
And I always thought like that was very interesting right off the bat. I was in my teens and I was like, this is going to be used for something that's not great. And as a young lady on AOL, I also would oftentimes get hit up with rather inappropriate requests or comments. And I always thought, this is not right. There has to
Mm.
be a way to disincentivize this behavior, punish those that continue to do it, and protect those that would be victims. And so going into around 1999 to 2000, you might remember the Y2K bug. And
Mm.
I watched everything around me just start falling apart. And I watched my mom go out and get cases of canned soup and cases of bottles of water. And we had a whole like freezer chest in the basement full of food. And I remember thinking, gee whiz, like, how are we here? And if we're here with such short sightedness that went into programming with a harsh release cadence or whatever, where are we going to be in 5, 10 years? And so what I wanted to do was go into law and I wanted to help make policy. I wanted to make the policies that made it more difficult for people to do the wrong things and would hold them accountable. So cyber law really focuses on that part of it, and it focuses on the misuse. When AOL first came out, you could actually activate or access their database services through their interface. And
Oh,
through their
wow.
databases, you could potentially access all of the payment information. And at that time, they collected full social security numbers and everything. And so I got emboldened by understanding that. And then I would go to the public library in 96 and I would teach older people some of the dangers of getting online and what it was like. And I kept thinking,
Mm.
these people are going to get eaten alive. They
Mm.
don't know. And now we're
Mm.
seeing that come to fruition. And we're starting to see some of the policies and the law catch up, but we're not quite there. And I really wanted to be on the forefront of that, but it's a little expensive and I, I mostly paid for it myself. So it's shout out to dad for helping me. Thanks, parents. And I got a really nice scholarship being a female in 2003 going into IT. So yay. But I did have to fund the rest of it out of my pocket and law is a little expensive.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, good, but it's a good space to be, and you mentioned it sounds like when the email inbox was filling up, and was this like an old school version of a DDoS almost, just like it is? Yeah, it sounds like
Yeah.
it.
Same thing with the IM bombs. You would just bomb somebody with IM so much that their
Okay.
whole system would just crash and it would kick them off.
Okay. Wow. But yeah, I can imagine there was a gap in time. I bet you mentioned that about database and payment information and social security numbers, but I can imagine there's just like when you're looking back then, I bet it would have been so easy for people that knew what they were doing. Like from a hacker standpoint, I bet it was frightening at the time. But it makes you realize how far security has come. I think sometimes people get a bit down in the dumps because obviously a hacker's only got to win once and defenders have got to win every time. But it probably shows you that things probably have come a long way really since then, because I think back then anyone with any knowledge and malicious intent was probably winning in a big
Yeah.
way.
I have to say, I think we've moved to an ideology. I don't even know if it's an ideology, but I think we've moved to the assumption that we're all compromised in some point, which makes us have smarter decisions and smarter conversations. So it's at least That
Mm.
part's good.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot more awareness and stuff like that. There definitely needs to be more, but yeah, we're definitely getting better. You mentioned there about keeping pace, and I can imagine law, policy, AI, stuff that's happening. I bet is it hard? I'm imagining it is hard to AI legislation coming in, and I was talking about this yesterday as well in California and with the EU. I bet there's a lot happening in your world at the minute, isn't there?
There is. So at SimSpace, we do a lot of red v blue tests and testing people, processes, policies, and tools and whatnot. But in my outside of that, my interests of policies and some of the biggest, like longest pools in the tent, let's say, are trying to explain some of these concepts to less technical individuals. And so that's what we're seeing and we've always had this problem because since 2005, 2006, when we started seeing some of the memorandums and mandates come down to start really getting into cyber law and understanding it, we realized that there's just a huge gap between educating the individuals who need to make the policy decisions and the general public who have to apply it in everyday life and how it applies to them. It is very much so a lot of burdensome discussion and a lot of reading right now with AI and everything else that's coming down. It's really changing the landscape a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think things are moving faster than ever. So yeah, so you mean the people creating the policies don't necessarily have the security knowledge in terms of a practicality sense. So it's not. Is that what it is?
I think sometimes we see
Mm.
that. And I think sometimes when we have a mouthpiece that goes forth and they have to explain these policies, it's like when you get into sales engineering, you might not necessarily be adequately, completely defining this widget that you're about to sell, but that's not the goal. The goal is to make the sell. And it's a lot of the same ways with policy. It's really important to get the policy in there, get it written, get it codified, or even just get a few champions in the room. But there's always a little bit of disconnect between the brainchild and the other very execution as it would be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that communication piece, we talk about that a lot on the show as well. That bit you mentioned there, being able to articulate that bit correctly and clearly and concisely and get the balance. It's a super, super duper valuable skill set, isn't
Yeah,
it?
100%.
Cool. Laurie, so you've progressed nicely through your career. I was thinking when I read that first intern rollout and then getting up to where you are today, it's been a really nice career growth and progression that you've had. I know we talked about CISSP before, if I remember rightly. There'll be people listening that want to get that certification. But that certification seems to apply. I'm thinking about management roles I've worked on. I'm thinking about stuff at director level. I'm thinking about a VP search I worked on lately. And even some of the more like hands-on keyboard, like senior hands-on keyboard stuff, they mentioned that. So it's applicable across the board. Any tips, hints, or advice for people gearing up for that, or any kind of how did it benefit you the most, or anything now that you wish you knew before you took it?
Absolutely. So, number one, I will say if people are just getting into it, the CASP actually is like a CISSP light. So, it might be a little bit easier and more
Okay.
cost effective to go after first and say, okay, do I really know this information? Because there's CASP and then the CISSP builds on it. And actually, probably Security Plus is before CASP if you were
Mm,
super new. But there's a lot of information across all of the domains to cover. And one of the things that I would, if people were really looking at going to get either the CISSP or I would caveat the CCSP, the Certified Cloud Practitioner,
mm,
because the CCSP takes a lot from the same domains that the CISSP does. So if you're already gearing up to understand what all these different things mean, all the different encryptions, the algorithms, like everything, all those different components, the CCSP has a focus on cloud that's invaluable for anybody, I feel like, especially as we saw in 2000, oh, I forget Obama's mandate, but it was around 2008-ish or something, where or maybe 2009, but where he mandated that the federal government would start to consolidate instead of having so many duplicative tools and efforts across it and go to a more centralized cloud phenomenon. And what we saw was a whole bunch of people running towards that cloud because I can not have to pay for the hardware necessarily or the expertise and I can shrink my shop and blah, blah, blah. Now we're seeing a lot of those services come back down due to other obviously well-founded concerns. And I think
mm.
what we're going to see is a really good hybrid mix of balances across the board that really take in that cloud requirement, that security piece that's really needed. But the CISSP is a little bit of a daunting task. And I would say that if one were new to cybersecurity, they might consider starting with a little bit lesser piece of the pie as opposed to consuming the entire elephant at once.
I think that's a really good point because I see this a lot, and I think it's been driven by like LinkedIn's becoming more and more like Instagram every day and all the rest of it, and Facebook. But I like LinkedIn. It's the only one I really use. But the point I'm making is I'm agreeing with you when you say about taking the actual journey rather than, like you mentioned, Security Plus and then CSP and then going up to your CISP after. And I think a lot of people forget that. Like you see so many people trying to break in and they want to be like I don't know, a SOC analyst or a hacker straight away. Whereas the reality is, you probably want to come in as a sysadmin first and build your way up and get that foundational IT knowledge. And I'm even seeing it now. Like I'm looking at a CMMC assessor that I'm working on right now. Even if someone's pretty good at CMMC readiness assessments, they actually want someone that's got that foundational knowledge as well because they know that cloud computing is going to come up. Knowing your way around an Active Directory is definitely going to come up. So if you skip that bit out, even if you do break in, you could still have issues. So I think that foundational piece that you mentioned there is a really valid point, and I think it's one that a lot of people coming into security get excited and overlook.
Absolutely. And it's that whole, I'm trying to remember, experience comes from bad choices and wisdom comes from experience or something of that nature. I can't quite remember it at the moment, but you learn so much and they're doing IT and starting in the hands-on stuff. All the CISSP is meant to do is codify that. And it's really the same with any of our certifications, right? So my last certification I passed was a grid certification. And I said right here, because I was getting ready to clean, I still have mine.
Very
But all that certification does is make sure that did the knowledge stay? Do I actually take it? Do I apply it? And so we have to actually have some of those tools in our tool set, or we just A, get overwhelmed, or B, it contributes to a feeling of imposter syndrome because yes, you've got this pretty little paper that says you've achieved the certification.
mm.
But unless you've actually done some of it and really put it into muscle memory, it doesn't really stay. And then you feel like you're always drowning. And that's where you get to the point where you're not excited to wake up and join the hunt. You're not excited to find out who's doing what today because you don't feel equipped to handle it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, and I think people try and remember to enjoy the process and enjoy the journey. I know from doing my recruitment, you're working really hard. It might be a really big search, and you get to the end and you do a great job, and the candidate accepts, and it's always like a bit of a. It's not an anticlimax; it's probably an over exaggeration, but I think that bit where you're in the trenches, and whether it's a certification or a search in security or grinding at work, when you actually look back, it's probably when you're having the most fun. So I think people, and look, I'm guilty of it. I get stressed like everyone does, but I think try and enjoy that process because that's the juice. That's where I think in our happiest state, you know.
Oh, yeah. It's the IT part of it. You can be a SOC analyst all day and all night, but unless you really can understand like what the protocols are doing, how the applications are meant to function, it's still going to be a little bit of a, okay, where's my decision tree? Okay, it says this. I don't really know why. And it'll make you a better SOC analyst when you can understand the underlying things. Okay, maybe I shouldn't see this information coming back through this 53 call because that's just a DNS probe. And I really shouldn't see that. Or maybe this ICMP packet's a little malformed. That looks weird to me and understanding why.
Yeah, no, cool. Yeah. So it brings me quite nicely onto. I know we were talking just before we hit record about. I was talking about interviewing, and you were as well, and blah blah blah. But when you are looking for people, so I'm presuming when you're looking, say, to hire someone, you're looking for that foundational knowledge. Is there any patterns of people that are the difference between, say, someone that's exceptional and someone that's just okay? Or is there any patterns you've seen of people you've said yes to when you're hiring for people listening that they upskill around that? Yeah. Any advice there for the listeners?
Absolutely. The resume tells a story, but it's not necessarily the candidate's story. It's something that they put on a piece of paper to get through the door, which is great. It might have landed them in front of me. I want to know if they're curious. I want to know if they're hungry. Those are the things that are important to me. I want to know that they've got the team's back and that they're a team player, right? Anybody can be a lone cowboy. Anybody can run out and charge and go down the street and do what they want to do. But how do they work in a team when they don't necessarily get to do what they want to do? So those are some of the things that I really dig for because I want to know if you're curious and you're genuine and you show up, that's 99% of what you need to do, even insofar as, man, I'm having a really difficult time getting my words together right now because I'm nervous. Everybody's nervous. Okay, let's go. So those are
Mm,
the things that I
mm,
think are super important.
mm. That word curious just gets mentioned again and again. It's like it's on the lips of every manager, director, owner, like everyone talks about that curiosity piece. And I think, again, because things are moving so quick, if that passion's not there, look, you can fake it for a bit and you can probably fake it for, I don't know, a few months or maybe 6 to 12 months if you're really headstrong. I don't know, but you can't really fake that for too long. And I think if you're not curious, like I say, it's very easy to get left behind. And I do think things are starting to move faster and faster. It just feels like a really interesting slash scary slash exciting time to be alive, I think.
It is, because we're not static anymore. We are dynamic. We are dynamic in everything that we do. And it's
Mm,
like the difference between analog, digital, and now we're even past digital. Analog is back there with the static stuff. We're
mm.
done with that. We are so far beyond it. And like you said, if you just want to be a button pusher, you can be, but you're not going to live long in the environment. You got to be curious and hungry.
Yeah, I love that button pusher. I did a post yesterday and it was like I was writing it and I was like, I've had to start getting people in our agency to review my post now because I'm getting a bit controversial, Laurie. So I'm just putting us as sometimes the guys and girls on the team are like, Tom, you can't say that. And yes, I can. But anyway, I did one yesterday and I basically said what you just said there. And I basically said, look, in 2022, the market was red hot. You sit behind a Nessus scan and chill out and get paid way too much money and think it's all
Mhm.
great, but those days are gone. And I think with AI and automation coming in and look, you see it in the recruitment world. You get some agencies and they win a job and they just pop a job advert up and they wait for the applicants to come in. And any client can do that themselves. I think AI could probably do that now. So, and it's the same with SOC analysts or security. Like, I think you've got to be going above and beyond and like really pushing it. And I actually think those that are, my theory is that people that are really pushing it are probably going to get more heavily rewarded because I think companies are being able to do more with less. Company that I'm dealing with now are leveraging AI and automation a lot, and they're building a very elite team of hackers, and I know there's going to be less hires there because they're able to leverage that. So the margins are bigger, which can trickle down to the team and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of benefits there for people that, like you said, are curious, hungry, and don't want to be a button pusher.
Oh, and you can't stay in your lane. The idea, to me, I feel like it's gone. The idea of you're only going to be in your lane and you're only going to do X, Y, Z. Well, we do need to have role-based access control, right? Stay in your
Yeah,
lane. You do this.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But above and beyond that, when you're, let's say, doing an event for a customer, you're doing whatever, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes
Mm,
to meet that mission, right? Like
mm.
you were saying earlier, it's so imperative and you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. If the company needed me to write a PR flyer, I'm probably not the best candidate, but I will give it a good college try. I'll do whatever I can because you know what? That's what they called on me to do today. And I'm going to run the team. I'm going to build cyber ranges. I'm going to help customers and I will write a PR flyer because that's what today is.
Yeah, do you know what? It goes back to that saying that gets thrown about a bit quite a lot about just being comfortable, getting uncomfortable and getting out your comfort zone. Because, yeah, it's so true and it's so easy to get in. I think it's easy to get in the habit of just doing one particular thing. And yeah, it's not a good place to be and it does leave you exposed. And I think the more you can flip and do this and realize that actually it's probably not that hard. And yeah, you might not be best the first time round, but if you just give it 100%, I think that goes a long way as well. I've had it on particular searches where for whatever reason, we might not have got off to the best start. Something's happened. It might not be my fault, might not be the client's fault. But if the client can see that you're absolutely all over it and you're giving it 100% and you're not going to stop until you hit bullseye and get the result, that I think does go a long way.
Oh, agreed.
So,
100%.
so yeah, yeah, cool. All right, Laurie, wicked. I get a lot of questions about breaking in. I used to be able to reply to all the DMs. I just can't anymore. I try and do posts about breaking in, and I always try and ask on the podcast, like, tips, advice, hints for breaking in these days. The senior end of the market, the whole market's been rocky lately. I still feel like there's certain aspects of it that are hot, and it's always easier for seniors than it is for juniors. That junior end of the market is fierce, no matter what. It's really hard for them to break in. So, have you got any advice for those people?
Honestly, some of the biggest things I'm seeing with some of the junior applications go back to what we were talking about earlier is a lack of IT, like lack of practical application, right? So, where's the home lab? What have you done? What have you built? Give me something. And one of the things that I often tell people is here's an idea go out and research open source tools. Find one, find Splunk, find whatever. Take a couple classes, implement it, try an AWS, try wherever, do it at your home. I'll help. If they're local, I will especially I'm mentoring a few women around here. I will help them get a desktop. We'll put ESXi on it. We will do something and get dirty in that app. Because once you start figuring out how the app works, what data it's looking for, where does it store that data, that kind of gives you a pretty good idea of overall, how does traffic flow? What can you expect? What kind of things are there? And A, you're going to find out really quick if you like it or hate it. B, you can say, hey, I've done this. I often don't want to say I ever touched a BlackBerry Enterprise server, but I have done it. I did it for quite a while. I think quite a few different areas that I did love, but it allows me to be able to put it on there and demonstrate the practical side of it. And to me, that is invaluable when I'm interviewing somebody and I'm asking them, oh, okay, what happens if you don't have any logs to ingest? Where do you get your logs? They usually don't know. I get it from the tool, but where does a tool get it? If you can't tell me in a domain where to go and actually turn on logging to figure out how you can achieve authentication logging for a customer, I am very skeptical that you're going to be able to be comfortable in the role. You don't have to be great about it. Just tell me it's a domain controller. Tell me it's a domain controller policy. That's all I'm looking for. Just simple things
Mm,
like that. So I always
mm,
suggest getting in on it. And then those lesser certs, right? Not lesser, but I should say entry level certs like Security Plus. They really do give a candidate a pretty broad view on all the different silos that you have to cover. And it gives you a talking foundation that when you say XYZ, everybody knows what you're talking about because we've all kind of been through the same certifications and we're using the same language. So it makes our communication more concise.
mm. Yeah.
So,
No, thanks, Laurie. And there's loads to pick up on there. And you mentioned about keeping the communication concise. I'm going to come on to that in a minute because I think as you go further up the ladder, long story short, I find that the more senior people I deal with, it's just get to the point. Do you know what I mean? No, no one likes the fluff. And I'm back and forth with some clients at the minute. They're nice. I get on very well. We're not even saying hi to each other now. It's just like, hang. I actually prefer it just straight down the line. But you talked about loads of things there. So, recent open source tools. You talked about the massive thing. We always talk about different forms of mentors. It could be like the people that you're mentoring, they sound pretty lucky because they've actually got you there as a mentor, which is wicked. But even if it's someone on YouTube or someone on LinkedIn, that is a version of a virtual digital mentor these days that years ago, back in the AOL days, as we were talking about earlier, no one would have had. But yeah, practical on the apps, getting down and dirty with the apps was, I think, the phrase used. And then on the hiring side as well, yeah, so you're looking for that genuine curiosity and the questions. And when I think about it, I was just thinking then, like years ago, before like the whole remote working kicked off, I think like it would have been you could only hire in your area. People would visit there, so there was maybe more leeway because there was less. The talent pool was much smaller. Whereas now the talent pool's huge and people are remote. So I'm finding this with our own hiring. If people aren't good, switched on, can pick stuff up themselves, and like you said, curious, want to pick stuff up, want to do stuff without having to be told. If they're not like that, it's very hard to scale remotely. I'm finding, but you've got to have these attributes, and if you haven't, you've got to learn these. So it just doesn't work, does it?
oh no, no, not even a little. One of our lead red teamers, he actually leads the red team completely. Bobby Smathers has often said two things I continue to keep in my pocket. And one is that I alluded to earlier. You have to be willing to address the problem. If you see the problem, try to find a solution. Try to figure out what it is, especially if you're in a growth company, right? If you're a startup or you're in that middle ground, there might not be anybody already assigned to take care of that problem. You just don't always have that luxury. If you see the
Mm,
problem, if you identify it, put words to it, name it, and try to solve it. And the second thing he often says is that in a good, efficient team, you don't have any room for someone who can't carry or won't carry their own weight. If they're so stuck being just that button pusher and they want to do just their 9 to 5 and they're out at 5:01 and they're never there to cover down when there's a crisis, then you're not really going to have the luxury of being there when there's not a crisis because the team that pulled together and went into the trenches, they're the ones that are going to be there. And oftentimes, at least for me, my boss is right next to me in the trenches. The other leaders are right next to us. We've got the entire team and it's all hands on deck and nobody is sitting there judging you or yelling at you or whatever. It's just getting the work done.
mm.
You don't have time for that.
Attitude, because listen, I like this, and I'm like, the culture we're building here is like that. We're energized. We're pretty intense. We're on it. I've got like people pinging us on a Sunday sometimes. They don't have to, but it's just like that. That's what goes down over here, and I love that. And I feel like you're almost not allowed to say that anymore. And it's like because everyone's on the work-life balancing, and I get it. You can't. Burnout's real and stuff like that. So there's an element of it. But yeah, if you want to really move forward and really crack on, I think all that's huge. I think it's really good fun. And yeah, I think sometimes we just go too far the other way. I think the UK and the US are probably similar in that sense. There's a lot of people where I don't know, I don't know. I could talk about it, they don't want to do much, Laurie.
Yeah. And you know what, though? And the other part of that is a good manager will recognize when they need to tell their employee to log the hell off, right? Even if you're remote or you're in person, you recognize, you know what? Listen, Brian Dorr my entire team is amazing. And he's so dedicated. He's so loyal. He's amazing. That man, sometimes I swear, I wish I could do something that would make his keyboard give him a little shock when it's time for him to get the hell off. Buddy, come on, you gotta do something. Get off because we need you here tomorrow. I need you to have a good brain tomorrow. Take a step back, go have a Pepsi, something like breathe. So hopefully that's where the balance I feel comes in. I know my boss does it for me when he's, okay, Lori, you need to step back. You don't have to solve all the world's problems. These are not your problems. Those are your problems. Go deal with your kid for now. I'm like, got it.
Brian, ring me. We'll go for a pint, but we'll probably end up talking about security anyway.
Fair.
Yeah, cool. So, you mentioned there about concise communication, and again, I think communications. I think communication is absolutely massive, and that clear, concise communication. Anyone that's got that is really, really going to stand themselves in good stead. Any tips for refining and enhancing communication skills for people that are listening that do want to step up their game in that department?
Oh, absolutely. I actually am working on my team with this. I don't believe in a captive audience. So I believe that everybody on any team should always feel as though they're marketable, that they have skills, that they can go out and they can give a presentation. And when we talk about communication, there's a couple different things that we need to do. Number one, we need to establish when you're writing whatever it is, a presentation, you're giving a talk, you're about to fill out a report. You have to put down why you're the expert writing on it, why people should listen to you. You've got this report, you've got this presentation, you're giving this talk. Why do I care what you have to say? And then you also have to be careful because no one necessarily really cares if you've got 3 dogs or a gerbil and a cat and you go fishing on Saturday and you fix the car on Sunday. So there's that thing, right? Because it's always a myopic view. People are there to intake data for their purposes. So you have to understand that. And once you understand that, the second thing, and I feel like it's a very important thing, is write in a way that is simple and transcends knowledge. Because if we're using these huge long words, or God forbid, if we get into our acronym soup and we just start throwing out all these different acronyms, it makes people associate because either A, they'll feel like they're not smart enough to understand what you're saying and they'll shut off their ears and they'll start to feel bad. Or they'll say, oh, this is just too cumbersome. I don't have time for it. And you'll lose them again. And we see that a lot when we talk to like C-suite stuff. You'll get someone who's really great with cybersecurity, but you just watch their eyes glaze over because you've used 12 different acronyms to describe network traffic and none of them are meaningful or actionable to the people sitting there. So ensuring that we're actually using words that can be digested, that's huge.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, it's so true. And I've had it where I'm interviewing candidates sometimes and I've been on the call to them for a long hour plus. And I'm like, at that point, you just know, and especially if it's a consulting gig, because you just know straight away that they're just not getting the point across. So yeah, I think that clear and concise communication is good. What would you say, though? It might be really difficult to answer, but if someone knows that they're waffly, they know they're using too many acronyms, is there any techniques that they can do to cut it down? Or if you're just like, God, I know I'm talking too much and I know this CEO does not understand a word I'm saying, but I just don't know how to change. It might be hard to answer, but have you got any like frameworks or go-to methodologies to get that communication sharp and to the point?
Absolutely. So one of the things I used to do was I would write a report and I often started in the acronym soup. And then every time I say an acronym, I say exactly what it means. And then you realize that you have used way too many acronyms. If you have to pause and go, okay, CISSP, Certified Information Systems Security Practice, you start to understand how heavy what you've just written actually is. So a lot of times, if I can't avoid the use of acronyms, because as you know, working in the DoD, which is in and of itself an acronym, or the US government or anything, you're going to have so many acronyms. Avoid it where you can, put an appendix where you can. And if you're verbally saying it, say, look, I know I'm throwing so many acronyms at you. I'm going to try to break it down as we go. Just let me know if there's a point at which I've lost you or my alphabet soup has just gotten a little too much, because sometimes that's just the habit of the nature of the beast, I should say.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, thanks for that. Because there'll probably be some people that genuinely really want to get better, and they're just like they just don't quite know how. So yeah, thanks for that. We talked about breaking in. You talked about about the practical steps and having that foundational knowledge again. I think a lot of it is as well about just getting the basics right. I very rarely work on a junior search, but I've got some like long-standing clients. They're mega busy, and they know they can place the role themselves, but they're just too busy, so they're happy to pay a fee on it. And I've known them for years and blah, blah, blah. And I tell you what, some of these junior searches that I've worked on, and it's been more lately because the market's so swamped with applicants, so they're happy to do it. So some of them are harder than like a VP search because people aren't turning up or people are turning up late, and it's just get the basics right. So I think for other people, just to flip back 10 minutes, I think for juniors, anyone trying to break in who's listening, I think just really try and get the basic things right, because it's actually crazy how many people don't. I don't know if you've done any hiring, Laurie, at the lower end, but it is absolutely crazy how hard it can be to actually find someone that's doing the fundamentals.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's so important. If someone says SIM, however they want to pronounce it, or whichever tool set they want to talk about, there should already be stuff like as to what tools you think you would use, what process you would use. So we don't see that muscle memory that much at the lower spectrum, which it's an easy thing to remediate though, right?
Yeah, cool. Cool. So so the team have been traveling around a bit. They've been, like I say, they've been in London. Was that for a conference or something like that? I think was it near
Yeah,
London Bridge, or did I imagine that?
it was. I would have to look it up
Yeah.
because it has been more than a day. I apologize. I was at a Pink concert last night, so I'm a little bit
Oh,
tired. This
very good. Look, she's been on the go for a while, Pink.
talk about as a female looking at Pink as a strong woman is she's such a mentor. She's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yes, we were in UK, we were in London, and then where else? I know we're getting ready to hit a few more conferences up shortly, like GovWare, that's coming up October 15th. Yeah, and the Gartner, that's where we were,
Okay.
the Gartner SRM one.
Yes, that's what I saw. Yeah, I saw a few US companies coming over for it because I can remember thinking, because I don't do enough face-to-face stuff these days since kind of COVID. I do a lot of stuff like this, the pod, and I post a lot, and I talk a lot on the phone, but not enough actually shaking hands. But in terms of the conferences, Lauren, and stuff like that, I know from like a networking, a relationship building, it's a good thing to do. Have you done much of that over the years yourself, or have you got involved with conferences much?
So I was at Black Hat
Cool.
last year or the year before I did that. It was super fun. It's such a crazy time. And of course, it's just so crazy. There's nothing to even put into words to it. But no, I usually don't go to the conferences just because I do have so much going on at the
Yeah.
homestead that I tend to let other people want to travel and can, and they go and they have a great time.
Cool, cool. So I used to ask which book, but it could be a book or a pod or any content you're consuming online, or let's say reading, that's making you like a better version of yourself, or is helping your security career, or is helping your overall career progression in general. It doesn't have to be security related, but just anything you're consuming that's helping you that could help other people that you could tell us about.
Oh, I read so much. That's a difficult one to actually put into because some of the biggest ones are like how the word is passed, right? The patriarchs, why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? Those books really helped kind of shape how I can go about and be the best version of myself and be a good ally and be a good mentor and do things in a better way. And then Atomic Habits has really helped. There was a TED Talk, and of course, now I can't, the name is escaping me, but there was a TED Talk and it talked about failing purposely. She had talked about, listen, you might go and try and start 4 or 5 different companies and you might see everybody else being super, super successful and you fail. Okay, fail, learn from it, move on. Don't wallow in it. Don't, woe is me. pick up your stuff and march on, because you will be a success. Biggest thing standing in your way is usually you, right? So I think about that a lot. And I think about the 80% solution, right? I don't have to have a 100% solution. By the time I build a 100% solution for certain thing, the foundation might already be gone. It's a house of cards. Cybersecurity moves like this. I don't always need 100%. Sometimes 60, 70, 80% is fine. Sometimes even 30% of a solution is acceptable for the moment. And so I try not to get down in the weeds and to say, okay, oh, you got to think of every angle and you got to do this, you got to do that. It comes down that I'm wasting my time. So I go back to Atomic Habits. I go back to that TED Talk and I focus my efforts there. I would love to say that's like where my focus lies, but I am a political junkie. I can do all these other things. I listen to a lot of legal podcasts that probably most people might cry. Listen to. So I don't tend to focus probably as much as I should on just cybersecurity, but on the same token, I feel like understanding certain, policies and frameworks and legalese and what the Supreme Court is doing and why they're doing it and the cases that are before them and understanding what cases came before that, I feel like helps give me more as a leader and as a manager, helps give me more perspective. I do have a rather diverse diet when it comes to podcasts and
No,
blogs.
cool. Yeah, listen, if you're into politics, you've got a hell of a lot of content to consume at the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got
There is no shortage of material.
No, there's not. There's definitely not. I find it fascinating as well. I find US politics
From across
particularly.
the pond,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, massively. Yeah, I've not kept up as much the last 2 or 3 weeks because I've just been really busy with kind of on the tools recruiting. But yeah, at one point I was like just watching loads of different stuff on US politics. It's very interesting.
If you're living in the moment, it's terrifying.
Okay.
But we have hope, and we
Yeah.
shall see what
Yeah.
comes of that.
Yeah. Okay. That's the one thing I won't be posting about on LinkedIn, so don't worry about that. but yeah, no, cool. It's good. So Atomic Habits and everything you've said will get in the show notes. And yeah, I've started listening to like this cybernetics. So I've got a premium account, and it basically you can type any book you want just into YouTube, and there's always someone there with an audio version that they've uploaded to
Cool.
YouTube. And if you've got the premium app, you can have it on your phone, put your phone in your pocket with your earpods in, and it just plays. So whenever I'm walking or taking a little walk or in the gym or just whenever I've got a moment, I'm just popping that in and listening to that, which is a really good one for like just feeling more secure in yourself, just feeling a bit more confident, less anxious about stuff. It explains when you get it, just really gives me a lot of clarity about different emotions that I'm getting throughout the day when different people do different things. It's really good because I used to do loads on like Atomic Habits is like self-help and developing yourself. And I used to do loads on that and I felt really good. And I was like, oh, I don't need this anymore. And then I've not done it for ages. And now I'm like, oh God, I need it again.
So this great human being, Pete Hay, he does a podcast called One of Cyber. So for those that want to break into it or already in it, it's awesome. But he and I were meeting, we met, I think probably 3 weeks ago, and we met specifically to talk about anxiety. And it's funny, when you find that trifecta of therapy and usually medicinal and good doctor, and you've got all these things going on, sometimes you get to that point where you go, man, I'm not anxious all the time anymore. Everything must be good. I don't think I need this medication anymore. That is the time to not get off the medication.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
double down because it is working.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you don't miss that. You don't miss therapy day. There's no, everybody should have a therapist, in my opinion. They're a great advocate,
Okay.
and they help take that little voice in your head that says, okay, the sky is falling. Everything is wrong. You're an imposter. Everybody's going to find out. And just helps and says, you know what, Thomas, you're doing a great job. You're an amazing human being. You're an authentic human being, and you're doing the right thing. And that's amazing. We should all have that. It's great. It's like those, remember in the 80s, they had the cat poster that was always hanging up, like, hang in there, right? A therapist is like that little positive poster that hangs up and tells you when you're doing a great job, or sometimes when you probably need to rethink things, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's good and it's amazing because like life, I think statistically, like people are living longer and stuff like that. But there's more anxiety in the world than ever, and we do need to talk about it. I've got a theory as well about remote working and spending more time on your own as a remote worker. Like I rang someone recently. I won't mention the name. They're a client of mine. I've hired loads of people from, and I just rang one of the engineers. I recruited him like 6 months ago. I just wanted to like see how he was. And he rang me back after and he was like, Tom, is everything okay? Is something happening? And I was like, no, mate, I was just ringing to see how you were. And I said to him, I said, you're doing what I do. I said, you're working remotely. You're probably working long hours because he's doing well and he's had a promotion since he started and all the rest of it. So he's doing nicely. I said, just no, like I was literally just ringing to see how you were. But, I was like, but it just shows you, like, if he was in the office with 50 people, he probably would have never got to that state because someone would have just got him a coffee and see how he was, and he would have been fine. But I think it's like, again, that remote thing. So you're probably right. We probably need that therapy more than ever. And I used to do loads of meditation. I used to always talk about meditation on the podcast, and I've stopped doing that as well. But yeah, do you ever meditate? Are you into that as well?
I do yoga and a lot of stretching because I have scoliosis and I have some back issues. So I really work on stretching because otherwise I sit at my desk and I literally, my husband, you have not moved for 3 hours. There are times I'm like, okay, I need to get up because my commute is down the stairs and hooker right. That's my commute, which don't get me wrong, the amount of reduced stress from commuting when I used to work down in DC or I used to work in Baltimore, I don't miss that commute at all. As we're saying, it's a lot of less exposure and it's so much more difficult to foster those interpersonal relationships in a remote way. And so checking in on people is critical. And it's interesting, phone calls. I noticed my oldest is 21 and my stepdaughter's amazing. But one of the things that she lacks was how do you actually make a phone call? How does a conversation flow? What does it give? What does it take? And so I feel like that's almost becoming a lost art in our constant barrage of bi-directional communication, and we're always switched on. And as we know, it's a 24/7 news cycle. So not only are we barraged with what's local, we're barraged with what's over the world. And there's so much so much change we can't affect. We can only affect so much. Most importantly, in America here, we can go out and vote, and we can vote for what we want to see and the policies that we want to do and stuff like that. But it's still a process, and there's no easy button. And when it comes to checking in on our friends and making sure everybody's okay, it's so imperative to have friends. Incredibly imperative. I get therapists and trying to make friends, which is so hard the older we get to make friends. I don't understand why it's so hard, but it is. It's like you're speaking a different language.
Yeah, I think we get set in our ways. I don't know. I think we get like more fussier as we get older. Like I don't know. I'm going to sound like a bit of a snob here, but if I go to like I've got like a set restaurant that I like to get. There's a few restaurants in London. There's a lot of restaurants, but there's a few restaurants that I like to go, and there's a few bars because I like this. And it's like probably when you're younger, maybe things are you're maybe not as picky. I'm the same with. I'm getting a little bit like that with customers. Even I only want to work with certain people that even on the recruitment side. But yeah, I think you definitely get fussier as you get up. But there's friends out there for you, Lori. How about your friend?
Oh, I like that. Well, it's so important. Like, listen. What is it, Friday? The girls and I are getting together and we're watching Practical Magic and we're going to drink. I'm going to drink a non-alcoholic margarita because I don't drink, but we're going to drink margaritas and it's going to be awesome and we're going to have a great time. And we're doing nothing but that. We're going to sit around and probably wear ghost pajamas and have a great time.
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, that is good. And sometimes it's ironically, that's where sometimes the best ideas can drop into your head the next day after that because you're more relaxed and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely good. But yeah, cool. Listen, it's been nice chatting and enjoy the pajama party on Friday. Sounds like you're going to have some fun.
I will. I dropped one kid off for scouts. I dropped the other kid off for something, and then I'm having a fun pajama party. So it'll be great.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, a little break from the kids. My sister's just had he's about 9 months old now, but she's just had a little boy, and it's pretty hectic for her at the minute. She works remotely, which I think is helping her, but her boyfriend doesn't, so it's pretty intense for them at times. But all good fun,
needy. They're so needy when they're gappy.
Nice to see you, and thanks for your insights. It's been good. It's been interesting, and thank you.
Thank you for having me.